We're signing up then, George.
Only if Carney here joins up with us.
And the war came along. Broke up the team. But we were needed, and we went. It cost us. Too much, maybe. I don't know. But I do know one thing. We still got some fight left in us, right, boys? It's the game we've been saving it for. For us. For Canada. For the boys of Sergeant Anthony.
The Winnipeg Falcons served Canada in the First World War. 2 teammates never made it home. The rest went on to win the very first gold medal in Olympic hockey.
We're excited to, both bring everyone watching and listening a show both that can understand and be educated a little bit about what's going on in St. John.
The Port Podcast, Thursdays at 8:30 on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV. The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Good morning, Nbpoli pod world and listeners. Welcome to the pod, the weekly pod, right in the dead middle of our federal election happening right now. And I am here in Menaquist or St. John on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, the Wollastook, and the Pescatomakati with my co-host, Joanna Killen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back this week. The world spins madly on. It's Liberation Day has come and gone. And we're seeing some really interesting stuff play out with our half prime minister, half campaigning to be prime minister, Mark Carney.
Yes.
And Pierre Poilievre was just here in St. John this week.
PP was just here.
Yes.
Which is, I see Wayne Long was able to get a picture in the pedway system with a bus driving under him. So I'm not sure what the symbolism of that post was supposed to mean, whether he's throwing Pierre under the bus or
Stands above the rest.
Who knows? We have been busy trying to get guests on this pod for a while. And you know what? I think the question we're going to have to answer in this pod, if we had a thesis that we were going to have to answer, and maybe one of us can argue for this and one of us can argue against it, I don't know, but do candidates matter? And everybody's obvious answer is always, well, of course, but let's play with that a little bit. Let's have the conversation today. But before we go too far, one thing we haven't done in weeks was talk about polling.
No, that's right.
So we haven't brought it up.
And by we, you mean you.
I know. I'm the one who likes to.
That's your.
Yes, it's my.
So fill us in. What's the latest here?
So everybody's been hearing about polling. I think we do need to talk about the audiences. I think we do need to talk about candidates. We do need to talk about polling. So let's start with our top line numbers. This is brought to you by Pallara Research, which is a podcast, which is a polling group, Pallara Strategic Insights. You can follow them online, Pallara.com. You have a couple of different polls that you can read there. The last one that they dropped was a little bit ago, was March 10th, but they've got a lot of polling that's coming from them to some groups. So we took these numbers from the Curse of Politics podcast, which was frequent to yesterday. So that's April 2nd. Today's April 3rd. God, yes, April 3rd, Thursday, April 3rd. And so this is from April 2nd. So this includes, I think we're up to almost 2,800 respondents, regionally dispersed. We're starting to get some good regional numbers from those. Of course, sample size always matters, folks. We're talking about 2,700 people reached directly across the country. So when you start to get up to that 3,000 mark, you're starting to see some resting realities. And, you know, until you get a few thousand cases regionally, it starts to become, or once you get 1,000 cases in that regional split around places like Ontario, BC, and Quebec, you start to put some pieces together. So let's break it down. Liberals under Carney, 45. Conservatives under Polyev, 33. NDP under Jagmeet Singh, 11. Green Party under Elizabeth May and Jonathan Pédineau, 2. PPC under Maxime Bernier, 2. And the Bloc Québécois under Yves-François Blanchet is 6.
Oof.
So
45. They were in the 20s not even 6 months ago.
It is absolutely staggering. I'm going to share this screen just so that you of us on Rogers can see this. And of course, the poly market, everybody likes to talk about the poly market, which is sort of the trading market, the betting market, the horse race market down in the States, but it is a global thing. People betting on outcomes and all this nonsense. They have, and they tend to be pretty good. They have a 30% chance for Polyev now to form a minority government, and 70% chance for Carney to form a majority government, I think. Almost nobody believes Polyev can win a majority government. The poll tracker has that as well. Let's just share this, though.
Yes.
I want to share this screen so people can see this jump in the graph. It is just staggering. Now, I'm going to change the layout here. So those of you on Rogers TV can see this. I'm going to take us away. Oh, no. Take us away. There we go. So if you're, I can also take away that banner, which is kind of being annoying up there, isn't it? There we go. So if you're looking at this, this is over time. Of course, right at the very back here, I can scroll down. You can see October 2021. You had, this is in 2021. So this is right after the last election, essentially. You had the Liberals with 32% of the vote. You had the Conservatives 31, NDP 19, BQ 6, Green 3, PPC 5, and others 1.8. Now let's fast forward to October of 2024, or January, even better. In January 20th, you had the Conservatives at 44.8% of the vote, and Liberals at 21. 2 months later, on April 1st, 43-37, according to the poll tracker, which kind of aggregates multiple polls. So this is like never happened before, ever. Like the closest you can find this, so when we look back when the NDP jumped and they were able to catch up to the Liberals and the Conservatives collapsed back in Jack Layton's day. But nothing like this has been seen by a two major party. Like you have a complete collapse of these other third parties. So it's something pretty remarkable to see. I'm going to pull that off.
It's incredible how external forces can really change our calculus here, right? Like
issues, baby, issues. People change their mind and the whole piece on everything. So I have a challenge for you.
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm going to give you regionals, and then I have a challenge for you.
Regionals.
I'm going to give you regional numbers now. Quebec, 46 Liberals, 27 Bloc, and 19 Conservative. So it looks like the Conservatives will be wiped out basically to Quebec City, where they've always had a bit of a stronghold. Liberals in really, really strong majority territory there. This is better than Justin Trudeau's last outcome if they were to have a vote today, and this is what it looked like. BC, big turnaround for the Liberals. That's where the Conservatives were really bashing them. You look at the BC election, we talked about that. The rise of John Rustad and this very right of center conservative group that came from nowhere to form the official opposition, killed the liberals out there completely, like the party's dead, and they absorbed into that conservative wing. So in BC, 40 for the liberals, 36 for the conservatives, 18 NDP. Ontario, this is the one, right? Like this is the battleground where everything is decided. 51 liberal.
Wow. That's another huge.
33
Doug
conservative.
coming out for Carney now, don't we?
What's that?
Doug Ford coming out for Carney these days.
Pretty much. I mean, there is no love lost between Poilievre and Doug Ford. I mean, how could there be when you're the premier of Ontario and your starting relationship with Pierre Poilievre, really, in any sort of engagement, was you trying to get people out of Ottawa and off the bridges from protesting about COVID-19.
Yes.
And Poilievre coming and bringing them coffee and donuts. Of course, there's going to be a bit of a poisoned relationship, right?
Yeah.
But that's pretty crazy. Like, we're in comfortable majority territory for a fourth Liberal government right now, which has not happened since Mackenzie King.
Wow.
So, okay. So here's my challenge to you.
Okay.
Men under 50 years of age. Okay.
Yes.
Who are they mostly voting for? And can you guess what the splits are between the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP?
I thought I heard that they were coming out in favor of Carney now, but I don't think it's like a big landslide. I think it might be more on the 50, 60, 40 split side of things.
Okay. It's moved a bit, but men continue. It is close to basically a tie.
Yeah.
Statistically, it looks like a tie, but it wasn't close for a long time.
Right. It was for Poilievre.
Under 50. Yeah. So it's now 38 Liberal, 42 Conservative, 10 NDP.
Okay.
Men over 50, what do you think their situation is? Similar?
See, I also think I heard that this was a similar situation where they're very much convinced of Carney's abilities and background and resume and everything else. So I'm going to say similar.
Similar? It's actually, the splits become not close anymore. It's now 46-37.
Okay. For Carney.
Yeah.
Wow.
8 NDP. Now, ladies. Let's do ladies. Ladies under 50.
Ladies. I'm going to say it's a landslide for Carney.
You'd be right. 46-26-17. How about women over 50?
I'm going to say it's not as much of a landslide, but.
So you think women over 50 are responding better to Poilievre or worse?
No, worse to Poilievre, more to Carney.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is more to Carney. So for women over 50, 51% of them are going to vote for Carney. 27 for the Conservatives, 9 for the NDP.
We're still not, it's still U.S. territory, right? Like where everyone was biting their nails at the end, thinking about Kamala and Trump, because what the polls were saying. And
they were so close. I mean, the polls were very much like statistical tie between Kamala, and some weird polls came out about some swing states maybe going Kamala's way, and there maybe being something. But don't forget, Kamala started pulling big rallies that were passing Donald Trump. So for those of you on my Facebook posting about this big rally in Fredericton, I mean, that's every conservative loyalist in the province coming to one place. Of course, there's going to be a few thousand people. Kamala Harris had the same reality.
Yes.
At the end of that campaign, Kamala and Tim Walz were bringing out bigger crowds than Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And, or, in many cases, bigger, in some cases, at least the same size.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that you're projecting force through crowd sizes is a bit like having a lifted truck with a small engine, right? She looks big on the outside, but there's only a V6 under the hood, right? These polls tell us that the conservative engine is just not cranking out results. It does not have the same torque. It did not have staying power. However, this is what the conservative resting average is. Like if you think of a conservative vote getting 33%, that's sort of their historical average.
Right. So nothing's changed. Just kidding.
Yes, at this point in time, it looks like that. I mean, the big story here is the collapse of the third parties. And
Very
liberals.
much so. It's unfortunate for, the NDP to be working so hard to collaborate with the Liberals for this long, and now they're just going to be iced out completely from the looks of things.
And we've talked a little bit about this on the pod before. Like, whose fault is that? Let's start with this topic before we get to candidates. Let's start with the topic of the collapse of third parties in Canada.
I'm seeing so much in this election what I saw in October in New Brunswick, where, there was this enemy to beat. And we're seeing, Carney become this hero, and Susan Holt was the hero. We need to unite against Higgs. And now it's, we need to unite against Polyev, or else our country is going to be ridiculed on the world stage, and we will be at the, behest of Trump, etc.
Yep.
And that collapses third parties. It collapsed the Greens here in New Brunswick. And it's probably going to collapse the NDP, and Jagmeet will be on to some consultancy work in the next 12 months.
He could lose a seat. It's true. He could lose his seat. The NDP number is strongest in BC, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he loses his seat.
No, I don't think anything is, especially when we're being threatened by the world's biggest superpower. It's whose camp are we going to be in, right, when it comes to this fight that we see in front of us? And it's constant. It's constant. Every day there's something new.
Yep.
About what's going to be happening to us,
Yesterday we seemed to be spared the tariff announcement, but the problem with that is that there was just a ton of conversation about universal tariffs, reciprocal universal tariffs, things like that, which Trump was talking about, which basically means everybody's hit with this. And if you do this to us, then this is what it means for you. But these 30 or 40 countries, these are the exact numbers they get. And he had like these great big boards out there trying to.
Yeah, well, I guess the economic advisor that he's working with truly believes that this is a way to reset the global economic system, right? And so it will make it easy. He also, I guess, believes there's this like tied to the idea that everyone else's currencies are going to tank, so then it really won't be that big of a deal to the US, that their currency will remain supreme, and thus everything that they're, importing from all these places, purchasing from everywhere else in these other currencies will be dropping, let's say, by 25% in Canada.
Yep.
And then, it's no big deal. It covers the tariffs, but, currency is not like tied to one thing. It can't be tied just to tariffs. It's tied to a number of other issues. So
yeah. So the one I would encourage listeners, you didn't see this last night because you had to you tucked in, but Jon Stewart interviewed a guest. His name is Oren Cass. He's with the American Compass, he's with American Compass, Understanding America, the New Conservatives, those kind of groups. He's really much this like center right. He had quite a spicy debate, and it was a good debate to listen to. And you could see Jon Stewart got put back on his heels multiple times by the way the guy talked about it. However, when Oren was talking about these tariffs, he did say, look, like, if there is a sense to the tariffs, his resting theory was we couldn't manage the system we built as a country. This country, where the country is projecting force onto the planet with hundreds of military bases and being happy to absorb the production of other countries that can make stuff cheaper than us. And we're not going to compete with them on the same things. We're going to let them have that lane in China and Switzerland and Germany. And we'll buy their products and we're fine with that. And yeah, we're going to lose some factory jobs, but we'll manage that. Like they really did try that project for 20 good years, right? From the 90s. And it's really collapsed. And his point is like the world order needed to change.
Yeah. And
tariffs are a blunt instrument that can help reset the ground to a new, but you know what he said, the thing is it's just projecting chaos. It's not projecting any sort of, here's exactly what we want to achieve. So this tariff is set to get us there. And so like this idea of clear communication, not there. So therefore it creates a scattered response from the market, from the other countries. But I if anybody wants to listen to an interview where somebody coherently defends the use of tariffs, and, you know, defends the change up of the world order and how things are managed, Orrin makes the best case for it, but Orrin absolutely shoots the Conservative Party in the back as well, where he says what they've become, how ineffective they are, how dumb they've been on certain issues, like with Elon Musk and other groups. Anyway, it was a good interview to listen to.
Yes, it's a challenge staying awake in the evenings these days.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, it's there's such a range of theories on how to recreate this system. But this one is like you say, it's a blunt instrument, and it's not taking into account sort of the health of the world or the folks in it who need to live and breathe every day. But there's going to be a lot of rich guys and billionaires.
Well, and another thing I forgot to mention, the Liberals in Atlantic Canada are polling at about 56%.
Wow.
Like that's territory where you start to see a sweep, like not one Conservative seat won.
Red wave again.
In Atlantic, yeah. And I think, there is a sense that we're going to need, if I can get into the psyche of Canadians, I think the way people are looking at this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the world has changed. We can't go back. We are going to be a victim unless we get organized. We have had governments that have been too focused on values issues rather than raw economic, societal issues. And so I want to vote for the person that can best manage that file. And Carney is coming out and saying things like, no, you're right. The relationship is changed, is never going back. We are going to be doing this, that, and something else in response. Like he's coming out with a pretty strong agenda with lots of premiers support, organizing the premiers, traveling across Europe. And Poilievre can't do some of those things.
No.
And so instead of cozying up to Carney, which would be my advice, and he should have done it a long time ago, he's just doubling down on this populist rhetoric, which people are just now being like, dude, I don't care about this lost liberal decade like you think I do. I care about what's next. And you just sound like you just sound like a little grievance. Like,
you know what's funny is like about Carney getting to show his hand and, be prime ministerial. Poilievre had 20 years to be good at governing.
Yeah, it's true.
So you had 20 years to be good at your job. You were not that great at your job. You brought one motion, one bill. No, sorry. You voted against a bunch of good things. Like, I don't know how you vote for this guy. He's this dude who you knew in high school who barely tried and then all of a sudden got to be president of student council. It's not fair. It's just, you can't just wear people down with your presence and get the job that you want, I don't think.
Yeah.
So
he's really good communicator, and he was very good at tapping into people's frustrations, right? People had a across the board frustration with the pretentiousness of the Liberals, with the way Justin Trudeau came across, with all of this rhetoric and conversation on here's our values and, all this stuff, social issues and trying to be, Captain Social Progressive and all this stuff. Meanwhile, people were falling further behind, and there didn't seem to be a government that was talking about that. captured those people. But
well, that's fair. Like you learned that rage does something to.
But anger has become anxiety.
Well, and I heard this really good story today that I think will resonate with you. A mother was talking to her kid in their early 20s, and they were saying, you know, you guys just seem to sort of trade rage. Like everyone just online, everyone's mad, everyone's angry, politicians are angry, we're angry, everyone's angry. And he's like, well, that's great and everything, but you know, I lived through a world where, because this is an American child, where I had to like deal with school shootings and the threat of school shootings, and you guys didn't stop that. All you did was get mad about it. Mm-hmm. So no one's actually doing anything. You can't even stop people from having guns to bring into elementary schools. You guys suck. So this generation's kind of looking at our generation and saying, all you guys have done is just get mad. You've done. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I think we deserve that criticism, honestly, that there really isn't a heck of a lot that Polyev has done besides tap into people's rage and make it do something for himself.
But it's shown itself to be a weak link.
I hope so.
It's like a quick burn. It lights quick, but it doesn't burn long because people can't maintain anger in the presence of anxiety.
No.
And when you're anxious about the future, like when you're frustrated about the future, when you can channel it into a person that's having the wrong conversation and leading the wrong type of government down, you know, a path that you know is just going to continue to do what it's been doing, that frustration can become anger, and that's easily managed by an opposition. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, anxiety is a different emotion, and it requires a sense of calm and peace to respond to it. Responding to an anxious person with anger is often a good way to lose the argument and to lose the person along the way. Being mad about their anxiety, right?
No, you need to make a plan. You need to. Yeah. Anxiety is the fear of the unknown in the future, right? So when you establish a trajectory that brings the temperature down, which I think is what Mark Carney's doing right now with his very detailed strategic plans that I think he's probably been mulling over for longer than we even know. Yeah.
Probably a year at least.
At least, if not just. Well, you know, those moments where you're like, the government should do this. And now he's all of a sudden sitting there and he gets to like control the helm. So
100%. So next question. So, okay, that's what's happening. That's the breakdown. Women more than anybody else are abandoning the party of conservatives. And I think that's demonstratable, right? Like women more than men in response to anxiety want to cool things down.
Well, like where's the adult in the room here? Let's go.
Yeah. And they tend to not have the fight response that men have a lot. Like me personally, I don't know if I speak for all men, but I personally basically only have a fight instinct. There's no flight, freeze, faint. I don't know, all these other different F words, P words, whatever they all are. I don't have that response. And men, so in the face of anxiety about an issue, I just want to go fight the closest thing that looks like the problem. For those of you on Rogers TV, you can see Beatrix, little creature in the high chair here in the background, chewing on a little carrot. So we'll see how long she's happy in the new high chair she has. Welcome to the podcast, Beatrix. Please squawk in anytime you think you agree or disagree. I forget where I left off, but hoping we can turn to the conversation about candidates.
Yes.
Because conservatives are dropping candidates, liberals are dropping candidates. Carney fudged a day where he dropped a candidate, didn't drop a candidate fast enough and messed up his housing announcement. Like Carney's made some mistakes on the campaign that commentators have talked about. Pierre Poilievre's just not able to pivot. He's going to double down on who he is, which is, I mean, I'm called him a little earlier. He likes to moan about Justin Trudeau so much, or what the Liberals did, and really fail. Like he has in moments captured people's frustrations with things. Like, you know, he did a housing video that was a long rant that got a lot of views. I mean, I found a lot of issues with it myself, but a lot of people responded to it. He's been able to demonstrate himself as a sort of a thought leader or on issues, whether it's the right leadership or not. But it's still leadership that galvanizes people and captures them. But it hasn't been able to translate since the campaign started.
No.
And so when you see when you see candidates being dropped, and you see a two-party race, largely, you think does it matter if we run good candidates? Like you look down here and you think, in New Brunswick, you know, we've got David Miles, the musician, coming in for Fredericton or Muckdo. We've got Karen Ludwig, which, you know, she's been in office before. John Williamson. I got Wayne Long and Melissa Young up here in St. John, and, you know, like there's these races, and it's like, does the electorate really care?
Yeah, it feels very built in, and I think it kind of shows that the parties feel like the electorate doesn't care.
Yeah,
you know, we witnessed this Melissa Melissa Young, sorry. She came onto the scene, and everybody in town who was in the PC party has now sort of scattered. I'm sure some of them stayed on to support her, but you know, the president of the riding quit.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like there was some internal battles there. And I mean, we just saw how everyone reacted to some of the parachuting of candidates that Higgs did.
Yeah.
And it didn't get you anywhere. And then you just come back and do it again. I know there's separate parties technically, but.
Well, you know, in some places, it just seems like the electorate won't vote any other way. So you think of Alberta, like our conversation with Nitty.
Yeah.
And, you know, the big story in the last week, one big story has been that there's a bunch of conservative insiders like Corey Tonight, which we mentioned on the pod before, just going off on a speech he gave at the Empire Club in Toronto to a bunch of conservative supporters and funders, and just saying, look, if this party doesn't get its head out of its and change the conversation and change the tone and approach, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And he said that weeks before, and he had some insider polling that showed serious loss of support for the Conservatives in Ontario. And then the media picked it up, and headlines like Conservative Civil War and all this stuff. But, you know, within that, if all you have to do is replace a broom and you got a closet full of brooms,
yep,
it's easy, right?
Mm-hmm. Switch one out, all good. Same.
Places like Alberta and Saskatchewan, like Nitty was talking about, there's places that it wouldn't matter if you ran, but that's where it comes back to, do candidates matter? Like, right. Who could run? And are we just so obsessed now with the leaders and filing our limited attention span onto just one lane and one part of the equation that we just don't care who represents us? They don't have to be good at anything. They don't have to demonstrate competency anywhere. They don't have to demonstrate that they're kind of leading in their field. They don't have to demonstrate that they know how the system works and they know how to navigate it, and they understand, you know, how to get legislation passed and what the process even look like. There's no test, there's no requirement. And I think that's bad for us. I think it's really bad.
I think you're right. All of a sudden we have the American style politics without the American style system. So we don't even get to vote. Like, y'all don't get to vote for Polyev. Like, you're voting for John Williamson, or you're voting for Melissa, or you're voting for, no, it's not Jake Stewart anymore, but the candidate for Miramichi. Yeah. So, you're not voting for Polyev. Like, you're going to probably get Carney when you vote for your local PC candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, I wish that we saw things the way that they actually are, which is you get to know that local candidate. There's so much that happens through your MP's office. You know, I've gotten serious help with like benefits and CRA stuff, and like people get help with immigration there. Like it needs to be the type of place that really is supportive to the community. So what type of person do you want in that role? It's a really crucial one in it. And, you know, we saw a big difference between Rodney Weston and Wayne Long here in St. John when it came to attracting federal funding for our region. So it makes a big difference who that person is, but we all of a sudden just don't seem to, you know, we're more worried about Carney versus Polyev.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's like, okay, we have, but yeah, it puts me in a position where I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. Right. As a commentator, I can say, oh, well, this is just how the system works and people don't really care who candidate is. And, you know, then where the parties are just going to need to wedge on each other a little better. And they're going to have to, you know, where there's close ridings, they're going to have to send the leader there. Like that just seems so rote. Like well, this is the formula. This is the equation. Doesn't matter how it should work. Doesn't matter how it could work. It just matters that this is how it works. And this is how the parties spend money. We spend money in areas where we know we have a chance. We don't in areas we don't. And we're not worried about star candidates. We're not worried about competency. We're not worried about anybody else. And Polyev, I think, has sort of got the weakest. Oh, sorry, everybody. I'm going to fetch Mr. Zebra here. Polyev sort of has the weakest team around him. Like everything is about him. The bus is about him. The plane is about him. The platform is about him. The whole thing. The guy's been in politics since he was 20 years old, and that's a knock against him. And it's a knock against anybody who spends more than 2 terms in office. And we've said that before. There should be term limits.
Yep.
But they're also just like, you kind of hope that your neighbors and the people around you care about who is there. And they don't.
No.
And you're like, how do you get them to?
I think this has been a 2-year question of how to get people to be engaged and stuff like this. And it's why we started this podcast to try and talk more about these issues and, you know, broaden the scope of the conversation. But, you know, to your point earlier about the anxiety, most people, including myself even, like, I don't want to interact with a lot of content these days because you feel very little control over it. And it's like, okay, great, one more election. Like, what will that sort of do? How will that affect me? You can see why people are disenfranchised, right?
Yeah, just 1 second. I mean, it's like, to me, I'm sorry I'm away from the mic here. Beatrix just wanting to get out and come closer. But to me, it's like we have this task as people to improve the society for our kids. You know, and I do not want to have a technocracy. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want just who is the top in their field around, you know, Indigenous relationships. Okay, you're the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes the smartest people in their fields are completely disconnected from the broader issues. And that's where politics matters. And that's where connection to the communities matter. You know, there's all kinds of times where, you know, we're sitting around the table and it's like, well, here's the best practice. And it's like, our people will not stomach that. And sorry, even this is the best practice. I don't have the political capital to drag 3,000 people who would be adamantly against this to do what's best for them. Right. It's like, you know, we talk about an ounce of prevention being better than a pound of cure, being penny wise and pound foolish, like all these nice platitudes that people believe. They say they believe, but try talking to somebody about the appropriate levels of density for a city, and you will see very quickly they don't give it. What the science says, the research says, what the finance says, what the infrastructure system says, what the transportation system says, they don't care. The world should not have anything bigger than a single family detached home. And if they don't say that out loud, which many won't, they'll still show their hand as being like, well, one of those isn't for me. Like we've seen that so much where people just don't care what the best practice is, but you do need some of that.
Yes.
You would hope that you would have candidates who are willing to process. Like this is what we tried to get Melissa Young on the podcast. We've asked Wayne Long, we've asked Karen Ludwig, we've asked John Williamson, we've asked a bunch of conservatives and liberals alike to be on here, and they won't come talk to us. And it's obvious why, right? They don't want the cross reference. They don't want to be cross-examined like we would, in a hearing for. They want to just have their platform, say what they say, and it's stay.
Yeah. Well,
And
Dominic Carney wants to come on here again.
he does. Yes, the Canada Future Party does want him to come on, which we will have Dominic Carney on and talk to him about this election and see what he has to say. But I wanted to give some time for at least a few candidates. We've petitioned Rogers to do a debate,
Like a candidate session, kind of like we thought it'd be cool to have a bit of a round table or a regional discussion, if you will.
Yeah, put 10 people on this screen and you and I can moderate with a bunch of questions and just assign the questions to different candidates, hear how they respond to it. But the question I would want answered is from each of them, where do you disagree with your party?
Right.
And how are you going to navigate that disagreement as a candidate? There have been times when you've seen outspoken candidates in a party move the needle. I mean, there's lots of times when we've seen candidates be outspoken and get kicked out.
Sure have.
But yeah. I don't know how to make people care about that.
I know. It's you're really connected to this world, right? And a lot of folks don't even really know how it works or how advocacy works, which levels of government, etc. So, and the lines have been extra blurred now that we've been in crisis mode for multiple global issues, recessions, inflation, housing crises, etc. The lines are being blurred between these levels of government, and so it's natural to believe that everyone's going to get things confused, especially now that even Rogers, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, can't host a local candidates debate, which would probably cost upwards of $1,000.
No, I think it would probably cost more than that if you talk to them, because they'd have a perception about what it needs to look like.
Of course,
right?
But they let us on the air.
Lighting.
I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's getting creative. We don't have a big production team. We got Beatrix. We got our thank you to all of our Patreon supporters on Patreon. Because without you, we wouldn't even be able to broadcast this podcast. But I'm going to do a shout out to our Patreon supporters here because we don't do them all the time. And I say I'm going to do them all the time. But I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, you look at what can be brought to bear on the conversation. And I think journalists at a national level are doing still a good job overall. They're not getting the attention that they deserve. They're not getting, the traction and the readership that they need to really punch through. But they have found out things on candidates. And I know Bob Fife is just sharpening his axe to hit Mark Carney about all of his offshore holdings, all of his real estate investment portfolios, all of the decisions that Brookfield made under his leadership about tax havens and all this stuff.
Oh my gosh, don't get me wrong. We're, like Nitty said, we're still 5 corporations at Trenchcoat, but it's who is more connected and able to navigate this post-capitalist hellscape that we are currently in. And it's a guy who's been involved in the building of it.
You're right. Yeah. Carney has designed systems within it. He has reformed systems within it. He would be able to go to Davos in Switzerland and talk to probably the person at the door for the 15th time and know his name and his kids. And you think, wow, that's not the life I live. But, envy, there's no place for envy in this world, in my opinion. So just because Carney made something of himself and, has a lot of competency and has really rich friends and all that, that doesn't scare me. But you know what? What do you think of this? Somebody position into this, and I hadn't considered it. Donald Trump represents the forces in the world trying to achieve oligarchy. Mark Carney, Obama, even George Bush, certainly Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, I wouldn't say Justin Trudeau, but certainly Paul Martin. Like, when you think of these leaders, they represent the corporatists,
Right.
people that want to achieve best outcomes for corporations. Oligarchs want to cash in on chaos, right? They want to use power and power projection and to gobble up control of institutions for their own need. They don't care if it's in the best interest of corporations or industries or the stock market. It's a personal thing. They want to control things. If it costs the market 2,000 or 3,000 points, if a couple companies go bankrupt over it, hey, that is what it is. And so
you see that in the way Elon moves, right? Like getting one of his other companies to buy this company and just sort of moving the pieces around a chessboard versus sort of knowing that you have to build relationships and grow your business. And, BlackRock versus Elon's portfolio would look entirely different.
The other one would be Warren Buffett's portfolio versus Elon Musk. Right?
Like, billionaires aren't monoliths, right? So you can imagine there's certain camps of thought. The Peter Thiels that believe in the dark, whatever it's called, future that he's predicting of where just, technocrats rule the world. And then there's the Warren Buffetts and the Mark Carneys and the more gentle souls, I feel, that, see the room for philanthropy in their work and believe that there's more to share. And, there's a certain limit to doing well before you should be giving it all away and all of that kind of mentality.
No, it's a good point. And I think about that as probably the easiest way to frame this. Like, the people's suspicion about Poilievre is that he's an oligarch type.
Mm-hmm.
That he's trying to introduce. I think people can't voice this, but we just heard about the leading scholar on fascism. Right?
Yes.
The last 20 years, just moved his entire family to Toronto.
Yeah.
He's from Yale University. I'm just forgetting his name, but he was featured on Front Burner the other day. So, and in his interview with Jamie on Front Burner, which is a CBC podcast, everybody should be checking out. He talks about this. He talks about these markers and now doubling down of oligarchic tendencies, which lead always to fascism.
Always.
Fascism is what fuels oligarchies the most. Like, that's their preferred cult of personality, right? Because whoever's closest to the big leader is the big benefiters, whether they're good at it, whether they have the best company, whether there's no competition. If you're the one that's closest to Hitler, you get the big, chalet in Vienna, and then you get to weather at the big place in the Alps, and then you get a big portfolio for the Nazis, and
you get all the best stolen art. Yes.
But it doesn't matter how good your company was or how cool you were or how capable you were. All right, sorry about that. We're just wrestling with Beatrix here. Another 10 minutes. And it would make sense that because of all this corporate ownership and hijacking in Canada, that we have this outlook where it's like, we ain't part of the oligarchy team, we're part of the corporatists, because corporatists they want the opposite of all. They want stability, they want competition to an extent, especially if they're winning in the competition. But they want to follow the rules and the playbook that leads to being able to win in a field, in an industry. It's like the nerds versus the jocks.
Yes.
Right. And then there's a bunch of other social groups like us over here who are just like, neither. And we can't break through. And that's the voice of those third parties. Is we're trying to wake people up to this like dichotomy that they've chosen to build that's going to lead to one of them winning, right? That's the fear, is that the corporatists win or the oligarchs win. And the only people holding them in check are third parties who can galvanize public support and take it in a different direction that supports a different group of people and makes different winners. And
Well, there's a recent article about all the pride organizations that are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars this year in the US because, they don't want to be on the bad side, like talking about the loyalty piece of the president, and are just like throwing away all of the rainbow sort of capitalism that they've participated in for the last, 5 to 10 years. Deloitte, it was the big one for me that I was like, wow, that's pretty significant.
I wonder what Eric thinks of that.
It's just like convenient, right? Like it's very convenient that these places are willing to pick things up and put them down depending on what the political climate is. So
yeah. No, it's something to think about, and it's like if you guys are listening, what do you want to see? What do you really want to see? Maybe that's the question this week. I should read. We have a couple of things I want to do for mailbag shout outs.
Yeah, so I'm going to sign off, and you should continue the next 10 minutes with the mailbag and chat about that, and I will grab the little princess down there. So
baby tricks. Well, you guys can come sign off here on my screen. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
So we did get a lovely. I'll start with the highlight, and then we'll talk about some other comments that were made, stuff like that. So we got a great email from a listener, and I wanted to read it to y'all because, hey, if you ever want to write us, we read everything, and sometimes we'll read your stuff on here, but I won't mention who it was that sent this. It said, "Hi, Brett and Joanna. I loved your discussion with Nitty. It got dark and depressing. I mean, realistic for a while, but was so fascinating to listen to someone with that kind of rootedness in and knowledge of her community. I am jealous. I also think it's shame she intends to never run again." I know, it's true. "I also loved your episode about tariffs, so full of valuable insights, historical perspective. I'll have to go back to that one again. Nbpoli pod just keeps getting better and better." Okay, well, hey, I mean, like, throw the hair, right? And we love to hear positive feedback from everybody. But then to answer this question, which we posed last week, should MPs make $200,000 a year? Should they make, as individuals, 10 times, almost say 7 to 8 times what the average person makes? Or in some cases, 3 times what the average household in Canada makes? This person's response was, "No. My husband's a computer analyst working at a crown corporation, and he makes half that. MP salaries should be cut in half. That is reduced to what a computer analyst with decades of experience makes at a crown corp, which is never going to happen because MPs decide what their salary should be. Quote, no conflict of interest to see here, folks. Just us pigs at the trough." Well, thank you for that email, because I agree wholeheartedly, and a number of you did also write. I wanted to read that one, but most of you agreed the salary that we pay MPs is not a acceptable number, and I would agree with that. I would actually agree with that with MLAs as well. I would not agree with city councilors. We are not paid a living wage. And we have to work another job in order to sustain our lives. And I don't think that should be the case either. I think that's a poor use of resources to have, especially the amount of counselors we have and across different groups. And it's just like anyway, more representation does not mean more governance. Good governance is gotten by good, capable people. And we have very few capable people who know what it means to navigate systems, different networks, know how to pass legislation, have a sense of what legislation needs to be passed and done if it doesn't come from their leader or HQ, right? So that is a big problem we talked about. Shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We do have a couple of new ones that I wanted to just mention. As you know, when you sign up for the Nbpoli pod, we don't do a lot of like posting on Patreon. It really just is a way for you listeners of the pod to engage with us. And so let's we have 3 different memberships, of course. We have a supporter, which is $5 a month, a $10 supporter, and a Politico. We have 4 of you at the Politico level. So there's a few messages left, there's a few paid positions left for sure at the political level, but newest supporters are Mark McElman, Carl Killen, and Mark Grulot, who of course was a candidate prior. We have Yves Doucette, Ash Simpson, Mark Brewer, Jackson Jones, Sean Rouse, Luke Robertson, and Fred LaForge. You guys, from our heart, thank you so much. It really does change the calculus for us to get on here and to put the work in. There's been plenty of times when we've been so rushed and running around with 3 jobs, 4 jobs, I don't know how many we have, that it's like we can't pod this week. And there have been times where we've had to drop a pod, but for the most part, we're here every week because we feel a sense of obligation, especially to you, our supporters, just to continue doing what we said we were going to do. But we'd love to have some more guests. Let's get that question in this week. Do candidates matter? And what would it take for you to vote differently? Or do we just simply have a disposition that wants, somebody to make decisions, all right? And for there not to be much pushback to those people who make decisions. It's interesting because a lot of people would not think that that's the system they want, but they end up voting for it en masse. So it's like the schizophrenia of the electorate, right? Very hard to understand, but predictable in many ways so far, based on, besides the rise of Carney, but if you look at the situation breakdown, it does seem like these more predictable outcomes based on what we know about political science. So anyway, thank you all, Patrons. Chime in with us this week, folks. We answered some of those questions. There are some people who do believe MPs are properly paid so they can attract the top talent. But my question to them is always, yes, if we can confirm that they are top talent, so do we pay on a pay grade for experience and capacity? Like, is there a test to pass? Is there an outcome that you need to achieve? It's a question mark to me, because as an elected official that tries to put in the work and I track my actions, it's always been such a disconnect the rest of my life where I actually have goals I have to achieve. If I don't achieve that goal, I don't get the contract. I don't get paid. If I don't deliver on goals for our nonprofit, I may not keep the job. Like there's consequences to failure and incompetency and things like that, but there just isn't at the political level. And it doesn't even seem like we, the electorate, care. So do candidates matter? What would it take for you to vote differently? It's questions this week. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you next week. If we can, we'll see you before. As soon as we can lock down any special guests, we will put together a special podcast. Peace out.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
I'm a singer-songwriter from Six Nations, and I've been writing songs about my experience. And with that being said, it's helped me hold hope in my heart in following my dreams and being resilient to everyday Indigenous battles. Competition between spirit, earth, and wind, let me tell you now. This song in particular, The Shiner, is a special song that I wrote for my grandfather. He was a snow snake maker, and that is a Haudenosaunee winter sport. It's my job to educate and to share, and the music allows me to do that. He'll be shining snow snakes and mudcats to the end of his days.
Support your local charities and win great prizes by playing bingo on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Was that 4 or 5? He's lost count and still thinks he can drive. Do you think he knows that when he is caught and charged with impaired driving, he'll lose his license and a lot more? If he gets in his car, he'll face costs exceeding $20,000. Does he realize he could have a criminal record for his choice to drive? And it could be much worse if he crashes. Wonder what he'll be thinking tomorrow.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
This federal election will reshape Canada's political landscape and our country's approach to domestic and international issues. Get to know the candidates running to be your MP and represent your interests in Ottawa. Hear from your local candidates during Rogers TV's coverage of the local campaign. And on election night, Rogers TV delivers the local results. Rogers TV. Watch, learn, vote. You're watching Rogers TV. The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website.
Welcome to the Lou and Sue podcast,
where we chat about life, love, and what we've learned.
So grab your cutest mug
and join us.
Hi, welcome to the Lou and Sue podcast. Today's episode is called Cheap Thrills.
Simple happiness.
But you're supposed to sing it.
Oh, sorry.
I'm giving you shit.
Okay. I love cheap thrills. I don't sound like Sia.
It doesn't
matter. Or the crowd that's singing.
The crowd, right?
Yeah. I wish I sound like Sia. She's got a very strong voice. Okay, anyways.
Yes.
I'm off topic.
Anyways, that's okay. It's fun today.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, because we did the Let Them book last week, she's had a quote, which Susan's going to say the quote.
Tell me, what is it you plan to do with that one wild, precious life? And it's a Mary Oliver quote.
Mm-hmm. Just got us thinking about like the things that make us happy that don't necessarily cost any money, and things that maybe we don't remember that really makes us happy. We start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that was something, especially like in our childhood and stuff like that. And just taking a second to remember those things and appreciate those things. And so we've got some questions we're going to ask each other.
Yeah.
And see what the things that we love are.
Yeah, things that just really bring us joy in life. And I think kind of it sort of stemmed from last week. We were